Hey guys, Joel here from Astrophotos. So first of all, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's subscribed to the channel so far. Over 100 subscribers, so I really appreciate that and thank you very much. This channel is all about astrophotography and imaging those incredible nebulae and galaxies in deep space. So I hope you enjoy watching these videos as much as I enjoy making them. In today's video, I'm going to be doing an image processing tutorial on Messier 42, also known as the Great Orion Nebula. So yeah, I hope you enjoy watching the video and maybe you can learn something from it. Let's crack on with it. Okay, so this is the Great Orion Nebula, or M42 as it's otherwise known, Messier 42 in the Messier collection. And you've got the Running Man Nebula just above it in this orientation as well. So this image was taken last year, I think it was 4 nights at the end of January, beginning of February. And it was 3 hours and 45 minutes worth of total integration time, 60-second unguided subs, and it was taken with a Canon 80D unmodified, a William Optics Z73 refractor, and ISO 200, and also it was taken in a Bortle 6 location. So that's the image processed, and as you can see, I've got quite a bit of dust surrounding the nebulosity, you know, for a sort of 4-hour integration. So I'm quite pleased with how this image came out, and yeah. I thought I'd do a tutorial just to show you how I process this image, so that you might be able to learn from it and apply some of the processing techniques to your own images. Now, I should say that some of the tools that I use, they are plugins which you have to pay for. So one of them is RC Astro Gradient Exterminator. The other plugin is a set of commands and techniques which are bundled together in an action tool set, and they're by Noel Carboni, and they're called Noel Carboni's Astronomy Tools, and I'll link to where you can buy both of them from in the description below. So once you've got those plugins, or even if you haven't, you know, you can still process. It's just that some of those tools do automated commands. Right, so let's get into the processing of it. This is what the final stack looks like, and as you can see, the first thing that we need to do is crop the image. So we'll just go to the rectangular marquee tool and do a crop about there. Okay, so we've got the nebulosity M42 pretty much in the middle of the image here, and the next thing that I'd like to do is click on image and change the mode from 32-bit to 16-bit, exposure and gamma, and click OK on there. Now, as you can see, the image is predominantly brown at the moment in terms of the background, so we can rectify that by using Gradient Exterminator, and what that will do is align the R, G and B channels so that it'll give us a neutralized background and a more sort of pleasing, you know, sort of grey background. So we'll just go ahead and do that. The way that I do this is to click on the lasso tool and then just draw a circle around the nebulosity, right click on the image and then select inverse. We'll then go to filter and RC Astro, gradient exterminator, and actually just before I do that, I'm just going to bring up the histogram so you can see what I mean about the channels and the colours here. You've got the blue, the green and the red all separated, and what the plugin will do is align these channels, like I say, into one. So just click on to filter, so gradient exterminator, and I'll leave the detail on medium and the aggressiveness low with the balance background color checked. So we'll just apply that. Okay, so as you can see, and as I mentioned, we've got a more neutral background color now. It looks a lot more like you'd expect to see in an astrophotography image. So we can just right click and deselect that lasso tool now, and you can see that the channels have aligned and condensed into one. So the next thing that I'll do is just some levels adjustments, some nonlinear stretching. So we can do that by clicking on image, adjustments and levels. And then I'm just going to bring the black point up a bit to about there. And then this is the midpoint slider, so I'll just do this in sort of small increments. And as you can see, when I'm doing this, the actual data is being pushed over to the right. So we can just bring that back with the black point slider. And sometimes you'll get this sort of line behind the data, this sort of dotted line here. And I don't think that it really matters too much whether you bring the black point slider in over it. But what I've found is that that's usually a result of the image needing cropping. So if we just cancel that and do another crop about here. Yeah, and as you can see, that line's gone now, that sort of erroneous line of data. So we can just bring the black point back in. And I don't like to bring it in too much, but yeah, about there will do. Okay, and then it's basically just repeating the same again with the midpoint. There's actually a shortcut command to the levels, which is Control and L. But yeah, just doing it with the mouse. So you can see that there's a bit more of this detail in the nebulosity that's starting to show through, and that's the idea of stretching. So we'll just carry on doing this. And I'm just going to bring the black point in again, about 20, I think. Yep. And yeah, we just keep repeating this process for the time being. Just going to click on View and Fit on Screen. And sometimes what I like to do actually is to zoom in on the image. We don't need to yet because I think there's quite a bit of stretching that we can do still. So we'll just carry on the levels. Okay, and you'll start to get to a point where the data, you're introducing too much noise into the image. So we've not got there just yet, but what I like to do is click on View and then 100%, and we can see what the image looks like at 100% here. So you can see we've got some nebulosity, most of it just around here near the core of M42, and there's some wisps of gas and nebulosity that are just starting to appear here, but they're quite faint and they look quite dark at the moment. So it doesn't look too noisy to me at the moment. So I think what we'll do is just carry on doing some more stretches. Yeah, and it might be quite hard to see, but there's some faint nebulosity just starting to show around here in the sort of the arms of the trapezium. So we want to try and bring that detail out, but we don't want to overdo it at the same time. So it's still looking okay. Yeah, I can definitely see the nebulosity starting to show here now on the outer parts, and it's sort of forming this circle. So let's just zoom back out. And yeah, okay. So the next thing that we can do is I'm just going to click on to a new layer now that we've done that initial levels adjustment. So I'll click onto the background layer here, and then the new layer icon. And I think I'm just going to leave that unnamed at the moment. And I'm just going to click onto image adjustments and brightness and use legacy, just to see what kind of nebulosity we've got here. And you can see the running man is starting to come through as well. So just cancel that. If we click onto curves, now the good thing about curves that we can't do with the method of stretching we were doing before is we can manipulate the curve of the stretch as to how we want it to be. So if you say wanted to increase the midpoint there but decrease the more near the white points there and keep the black points dark as well, you see how that's affecting the image. So yeah, there's quite a few things that we can do with curves, but what I like to do is set some points here. So I'll just click on to 3 anchor black points and then raise the curve. And as you can see, you've just got to be careful about star bloat, because if you stretch too much, and see what happens. So about there, and then we'll just change the output. Okay. So with regards to the crop of the image, I don't want to use this sort of composition, so I want to do my own crop of it, and I'm going for a portrait crop because I think it suits M42 and the Running Man. Actually, first of all, what I'll do is click on image and then rotate. So if we go 90 degrees clockwise, that'll give us the orientation I'm after. And we're just going to click on fit on screen. And I think if we go for something like that, image and crop, okay, and then view, fit on screen. Right, so we can see some nice nebulosity starting to come through now. What we can do is click on image, adjustments and vibrance, and just increase saturation first, and we'll just increase the colours a bit, 20%. You can see that's starting to make the reds come through a bit more now. And another good technique actually for bringing out the reds a bit more, especially if you've got an unmodified DSLR, is to click on adjustments and selective colour, and then with the cyan slider on the reds, you just bring that over to the left. You can see how that's really changed the colours of the reds there, but we can leave that until later on. So let's just click on zoom in. Yeah, okay, so I think we can actually reveal a bit more data. So we'll click on curves and we'll set those points just there on the data. And you can see the effect that that's having if we turn the preview off and on. So it's quite subtle, but it does make a difference. Okay, so I think we'll be able to reveal more of those, more of that nebulosity on the outer arms if we run some of the tool sets. So if we click on to, first of all, I'll just come back out and fit on screen. And then if we click on to view, window, actions, and we've got all these options here in the astronomy tools presets. So what I like to do, because if you select one of these and run it, but you're not happy with the results, you can't go back by doing an undo. So I like to create a new layer and just rename the layer, whatever it is that I'm going to start with on here. So I think if we yeah, I think we'll reduce the stars to begin with. And it's this option just here. So we'll click on there and then play. Okay, and if you click on the eye icon there, you can see the effect that's having. It's quite subtle, but if we zoom in at 100%, yeah, it has shrunk the stars a bit. So let's zoom back out, fit on screen. And yeah, I'm happy with that layer, for instance. So if we create another one, and let's try enhance DSO and reduce stars. So I'll just rename this. So as it says, this should enhance the nebulosity, but reduce the stars at the same time, so that, yeah, you know, we can see more of the nebulosity, basically. Okay, and I like that because that one has brought out some of the dust, especially around here, that you can see in the Running Man Nebula, and some around here in M42. So that's definitely, yeah, a really good tool set to use. So I think if we do another layer, and we'll do a local contrast enhancement. And the contrast enhancement is exactly as it says. It should just increase the contrast of the image, and especially the nebulosity, and give it a bit more clarity, so that it sort of stands out a bit more. So let's have a look what that looks like. Just zoom in a bit. So yeah, you can see it's gone from looking quite blurry actually, and yeah, almost like a bit of a Gaussian blur, to quite a bit of finer detail. It looks a bit sharper, and definitely more contrast, which is exactly what you want with this kind of nebula, because there's a lot of detail and contrast within it, especially around here, you know, and you can further enhance that by using more contrast later on, and especially the color balance as well. So if you introduce a bit more red, things will stand out more in the detail. So yeah, enhanced DSO, local contrast enhancement, increased star color is one that is always welcome. So let's just create a new layer, and star color. And again, this is quite a subtle action, but it's one that, you know, it won't have any detrimental effect on the image. And, you know, a diversity in star color is always welcome. So we can leave that one as well. This less crunchy, more fuzzy is one that I sometimes use, and sometimes I find that it makes things look a little bit sort of blurry and washed out, or yeah, not quite as sharp as you'd like. So we'll just do another layer, and we're going to call this less crunchy. So that's with, without. That's with. Without. So it's not really had that much of an effect actually anyway, but I don't think it's a problem to leave that one on, so that's okay. Less crunchy, more fuzzy. Make stars smaller. Select brighter stars. Space noise reduction. If the image looks overly noisy, we can apply some noise reduction. There's a bit of noise that I can see, so we'll go ahead and do that. So that's space noise reduction. And you can see it's put a mask on the image there around the nebulosity so as not to affect that. And yeah, with the space noise reduction, you can see that's giving it kind of a glazed, glassy sort of look, which yeah, is not what I'm after. So I'm gonna just turn that one off for the time being. And I think it's deep space noise reduction, which is a bit better for that kind of thing. So let's make a new layer, and yeah, deep space noise reduction. And again, that's given it sort of a bit of a glazed look with the slightly less contrast, but it's smoothed out the background, and yeah, the background looks quite nice. And we can always just increase the contrast of these details later on. So that's deep space noise reduction. I don't think that we need to use any of these other commands. We'll just try the lighten only DSO and dimmer stars though, because that can be a good one as well. So just create another layer and lighten DSO. I'll just run this command. Okay, so that's really sort of brightened things up now. Let's just zoom out. Yeah, I actually quite like that. It has made the core of M42 a little bit too bright for my liking, but we might be able to fix that. So let's just create a new layer, Control and J. And what I want to do is click on View and then 100%, and I'll just draw a lasso tool around here, and then Image, Adjustments and Levels, and we might be able to just bring some detail back in. Feather, if we change that to 100. Yeah, I think about there is okay. It doesn't matter that the core's a little bit overexposed. It is the core of M42, and it's going to be bright anyway. But you can see that lightened DSO has brought out the arms of the trapezium here really nicely, and you can really see some dust as well, just surrounding the Running Man Nebula and M42. And this sort of region of space, it is quite sort of dusty and brown. So yeah, it's quite normal in that respect. But we can play with the colour balance a bit. So one of the things that I like to do, as I mentioned earlier, is to click on Selective Colour and just bring the reds over a bit. You don't need to do it too much, but you can really see the effect that has, all of this sort of dust here that it's highlighting and around here. But it will bring in some artifacts and a bit of noise. So if we just bring that to about 50%, and you can see the effect that it's still having. So if we look here at these sort of reds and then turn it on, yeah, that's quite nice. So let's just click on to adjustments again, levels, and yeah, we can bring the black point in a little bit. Sometimes what I like to do is click onto the color sampler tool. So we'll click on there and then just select somewhere in the background. And the info channels show that the red's on 45, green 31 and blue 33. I think the reason for that is because we've just boosted the reds. So that's not a problem. You know, if you want that kind of look and you want to sort of exaggerate the dust a bit and the red sort of brown nebulosity around M42, you're not going to have a completely balanced background. But it's important that the green and the blues are pretty much the same values. I always like to have a little bit more blue than green, because there isn't really that much green in space, so that's okay. But we can, you know, just play with the color balance and the levels with image adjustments and levels again. So you can see here, if we bring the red slider in, it's making the image less red and more blue and green, which might look quite nice for the sort of gases and nebulosity and clouds and dust here, but it's affecting the background. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a compromise. You might like it about there, where the background looks a bit darker and a bit more sort of space-like, but it probably doesn't exaggerate that kind of brown dustiness around M42 as much, which I quite like. So I think if we go in fact, if we leave the red where it is, I think that's okay. We'll just click back onto RGB and just see if we can collectively bring things in a bit. Yeah, I think that'll do. And then, yeah, sometimes what I like to do is click on to the lasso tool and just highlight or select, you know, certain parts of the image, and then give them a bit more contrast. So if we go to adjustments, contrast, sometimes even less contrast can work, because you can see if you go too far over, it sort of squashes that nebulosity around the lower part of the nebula there. But bringing the contrast back, yeah, you can start to see more of the nebulosity. So let's actually just deselect there and have a look at the whole contrast. Yeah, the only problem with that obviously is that you'll introduce artifacts to the image and noise. So again, it's a bit of a compromise really. But certainly you can, sort of sharpen things up a bit. Yeah, so I think actually what we'll do is we've done a red adjustment layer there. So that's Selective Colours red. And I'm just going to create another layer, and I'm going to use this feature of Photoshop called Shadows and Highlights. So if we just call this Shadows Highlights, and this can be quite useful and quite a powerful feature of Photoshop if used correctly. So we'll see what happens with it. I personally don't like that kind of look with the Orion Nebula, where everything just looks there's too much clarity and everything just looks a bit sort of flat. Yes, there's a lot of detail in it, but for me it's just a bit too much, and I wouldn't use that anyway because there's too much in the way of noise that's introduced. So we'll just bring the shadows back here. So that's 0%. Yeah, and really it's just a case of playing with these values and seeing, what does what. So yeah, you can see the effect that this shadows and highlights has. What I think I'll do is just cancel that and go back into it. I'm just going to bring the shadows down a little bit, probably about 10%. Yeah, actually, I didn't really like that too much, so I'm going to delete that layer. And I think it just looks a bit nicer like this. But what I'm going to do actually is just crop the image about there. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's looking quite nice now. I think if we just click onto levels, might be able to bring that in a bit more. And we can see if we can do some more curves as well. So just anchor those points in there. Yeah, we can introduce a bit more red as well. So if we click on to color balance and highlights, we bring the red over here. And you can see that's having quite a nice effect. That's with, without. So like I say, this sort of region of space, it's quite dusty anyway, with a lot of brown and red dust. So I think we can probably just put that to about 10% or plus 10 on there. And yeah, so sometimes nearer the edges of the frame, for whatever reason, you might have some stars that are looking a bit elongated, and it's not a great look. You know, probably a back focus issue, or you know, a back focus spacing error. So yeah, with Photoshop, we can just click on Spot Healing Brush and just clone them out. Yeah, the rest of the stars are okay, but I think what we'll do is just go into Actions and do another Make Stars Smaller command. So that command has just finished, and yeah, stars are definitely a bit smaller. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it really. Let's just see what the other image looks like. Okay, so not too dissimilar really. I think I might have, on this image here, I might have just done another lasso tool around the running man and clicked onto levels and just, yeah, I think just made that look a bit more contrasty, probably a bit brighter as well. But really it's just about keeping those colours kind of neutral, and especially with the trapezium, you can see that's sort of like a grey kind of teal colour, and then the inner part is that sort of red colour. So yeah, I hope you found that useful, and it was a pretty basic workflow for, you know, how I process some of my astrophotography images. You know, certainly not a very complicated workflow compared to some that you might need for some images, things that require layers and layer masking, you know, opacity, that kind of thing. Yeah, this was sort of a brief introduction to processing. So yeah, I hope you found it useful and enjoyable, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and give the video a like if you found it useful or interesting. And until next time, clear skies.